Who do you see on the horizon for 2028 in the Democratic primary?
Right now?
Yeah.
Bernie and AOC.
No.
They got the biggest crowds.
That doesn't matter.
It won't sustain itself, but right now they have no leader.
Bernie, AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
What happens when one of TV's most outspoken commentators goes straight after one of the left's biggest rising stars? It gets explosive, fast. Bill Maher has now turned his fire on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and this clash is impossible to ignore. On Real Time with Bill Maher, Maher isn't holding back, calling out what he sees as contradictions, rebranding, and political theater. And trust me, this one gets intense.
James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since. Just last year, The Guardian declared woke the word of our era. I guess they didn't get the memo from the Mean Girls Club.
AOC has long embraced progressive, or what critics label woke, politics. But now, as public opinion shifts, her tone seems to be shifting too. The same label she once wore proudly is suddenly being softened, reframed, or quietly sidestepped. Maher sees that as a red flag. On his show, he challenges what he views as a political pivot, asking whether this is evolution, or just rebranding under pressure.
What a great strategy, never missing an opportunity to remind voters how lame and clueless and hopelessly uncool they are, especially since those are the ones who actually vote. But okay, fine. What word would you like us to use for the plainly insane excesses of the left that are not liberalism, but something completely different? Because you can't have that word liberal from us and think it should cover things like canceling Lincoln and teaching third graders they're oppressors. That's all your new thing.
And this is exactly why Maher still pulls a massive audience. He says the uncomfortable part out loud. If politicians move away from the word woke, that doesn't mean the ideas disappear. Issues around identity, gender debates, and cultural policies are still front and center. Maher's argument is blunt. You can rename the movement, but voters will still judge the substance behind it.
Every month I see a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid.
Take the Latinx debate. It was pushed as inclusive language by figures like Gavin Newsom and AOC, but many within the Latino community rejected it outright. Polls and interviews showed a clear disconnect. Yet the push continued, until backlash made it impossible to ignore. Newsom stepped back. AOC defended it. But to many voters, the damage was already done. It didn't feel like representation. It felt like being talked over.
And more of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer. If you're a parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education, partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher, yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot.
Maher connects this to a bigger trend: shifting voter loyalty. He argues that some Latino and Asian voters aren't suddenly changing ideology, they're reacting to frustration. They want better schools, safer streets, and economic stability, not slogans or symbolic gestures. And when politicians seem more focused on cultural messaging than everyday concerns, trust starts to crack. Once that happens, voters don't just complain, they move.
See on the horizon for 2028 in the Democratic primary.
Right now?
Yeah.
Bernie and AOC.
No.
They got the biggest crowds.
That doesn't matter.
It won't sustain itself, but right now they have no leader. Okay? But this is the thing the Republican Party has to understand, too. Both parties lost in the last election. Trump won, okay? And I don't know if that's going to transfer.
Then comes the reality check about political energy. Big rallies, loud crowds, viral moments, they look powerful, but they don't guarantee votes. Even figures like Bernie Sanders have shown that enthusiasm doesn't always translate into victory. Elections are won in the middle, not just on the edges. And that's where strategy, not just passion, matters most.
Baggett adjacent, and then Vance and Jr. will fight it out for that crowd.
AOC and Bernie, and who's at the top of the ticket?
They're going to lead right now.
Who's at the top of that ticket, Kevin? Because if it's not Bernie, he's going to be vice president and wait his turn?
No, it would be. Bernie's been running each time. I'm just saying who's in the lead right now. I don't think that's how it ends up.
But big crowds don't necessarily mean who's the right candidate. You know, when I started
but it drives where the ideas are going to go. It's going to drive the money for a while.
It doesn't make them the winner.
It doesn't make them the winner. You'll have to wait till you'll get 2 years out. And then you'll start seeing these governors that start showing solutions. You also have to know, what is the issue going to be? Are we going to have a foreign policy issue? Are we going to have an economic issue? And who's been the best in leading in that? But right now, for the Democrats, who's going to lead for the next 2 years, the money is going to... AOC outraised everybody in the House.
And it's all small dump.
Money tells a similar story. Campaigns can raise millions, dominate headlines, and look unstoppable. But as Kamala Harris has experienced in past cycles, funding alone doesn't win elections. If the message doesn't connect, the entire campaign can collapse when voters finally step into the booth. Flash doesn't beat substance.
AOC, Mandani are not Democrats. They'll be the first to tell you that. They're democratic socialists, and that's a very different thing, and I don't think people know that yet. I don't think people realize we already have a lot of socialism. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, unemployment insurance, food stamps, veterans benefits, Pell Grants, COVID-era payments, farm subsidies, disability payments, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, corporate bailouts, and the jobs program that is building weapons the Pentagon doesn't even want.
Maher also draws a sharp distinction many voters blur. Figures like AOC aren't just mainstream Democrats. They're often aligned with democratic socialist ideas. That difference matters. Policies that expand government involvement can energize a base, but they can also push moderates away. And in national elections, moderates often decide the outcome.
Are radicals about this concept, and radical economic policy is always ineluctably married to radical social policy. Their platform, for example, calls for completely open borders. They're for what Biden was doing, but more. You think you're going to win an election on that? This just seems like more extremism at a time when Americans are begging both parties, please, could just one of you act normal?
That's where Maher's warning hits hardest. He argues that if AOC continues leaning into policies perceived as far left, it could limit her national appeal. Ideas like expanded benefits or free public services may excite supporters, but they also shape perception among undecided voters. And in politics, perception isn't secondary, it's everything.
Police or military in the streets, either MAGA's crypto crony capitalism or city-run grocery stores. No, I don't want that. I want a Democrat who reassures me if you like your Whole Foods, you can keep your Whole Foods.
In the end, Maher's message cuts through the noise. Elections aren't won with ideology alone. They're won with trust, relatability, and broad appeal. You can have momentum, money, and media attention, but without connecting to everyday voters, it all falls apart. And that's the real takeaway. In politics, ignoring public perception doesn't just cost popularity, it can cost power.